Today, we're going to talk about elements and principles of design. What is the purpose of design? Design needs to create emphasis, making an element more eye-catching than other elements. This is also known as focal point, area of the work that attracts the viewer's attention first. A focal point is a part of the visual hierarchy. A focal point is the first thing that you see in a design. So what is the focal point in this magazine? That's right, it's Rihanna's face. That's the first thing that you see on the magazine cover. So the second or third read could be the big fashion issue or the title, Vogue. Now that we know more about the focal point, let's talk about principles of design. So the principles of design include simplicity, contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. So this makes scrap. The S in scrap stands for simplicity. So simplicity sometimes means that less is more and can help establish a focal point. Looking at these two designs, they have a very dynamic focal point. That's because they are super simple. The Sherlock Holmes example has only 3 colors, and you know that the pipe is the focal point because it is the biggest thing on the page. As for the Rock magazine, of course, the Rock's face is the focal point, and it is simple because there's only a picture and just some text on the side. Here's an example of a design that is not simple. Look how complex this is. What's the focal point? Yeah, I don't know either, okay? I don't know where my eye should go. This is really just a mess. So this is what happens when your design is not simple. It just looks really bad. There's no focus. Contrast occurs when 2 elements are different, provides a means of emphasizing what is important or directing the reader's eye. There are different types of contrast, such as contrast with size, contrast with color, contrast with value, and contrast with type. So let's take a look at some bad and good choices of contrast. On the left, there's a bad choice because there are complementary colors that are clashing. It's very hard to read, and it really hurts your eyes with those bright colors. In the middle, it's really difficult to read the text because the colors are very similar. And on the right is a perfect example of good contrast. Here's another example of good contrast. There is excellent contrast with color. The white lettering really stands out on that dark background. And good contrast with type. You are able to distinguish what is the title of a magazine and what is featured in the magazine with the different type. Repetition, repeating elements throughout a work. This is also known as consistency. When you have repeating elements, it creates unity, the degree of agreement existing among the elements. This is a very obvious example of repetition. You see that the faces repeat in this design. Here's a less obvious example. The pink in the text matches the pink in her dress. Also, there are fonts repeating. There are about 3 different typefaces that repeat throughout the magazine. It's important for your design to follow the rules of 3. Design no more than 3 font sizes, 3 font types, and 3 main colors. Looking at the Sherlock Holmes example, there are only 3 colors being used. There are about 3 different typefaces and only 3 font sizes. Alignment, placement of elements on a page. There's left alignment, centered alignment, and also right alignment. Do you see the difference? Centered alignment is always the weakest. Here's an example of centered alignment. This is a really bad design because it has very awkward space around it and it looks very staggered and unorganized. So you want to avoid center alignment. Here is an example of left alignment. Do you see how clean this is? So you always want to avoid center alignment. So what type of alignment do you see in this magazine? That's right, left alignment. Proximity. How close together elements are, used to group or isolate elements, and deals with elements of space. This poster design is an excellent example of good proximity. They are using space to divide the title from the address and also from the contact information. This is also a good example of space or proximity. The name is away from the contact information, so you know what to read first and you know that there are separate forms of information. Moving on to elements of design: color, line, shape, space, and size. Value is the lightness or darkness of color. Saturation is the amount of brightness or dullness of color. Complementary colors are opposite colors on the color wheel. Avoid using these colors together with text. They can appear to be too vibrant. Analogous colors are adjacent or next to one another on the color wheel. These colors work well together and are pleasing to the eye. Line is also called stroke. It is a mark with greater length than width. It is a mark connecting 2 points. A shape is an object with 2 dimensions, width and height. Form is an object with 3 dimensions, height, width, and depth. Positive space is space taken up by objects. Negative space is space around objects. Space prevents crowding. White space is good. And space is related to proximity. The example on the left is an example of bad spacing. The text is on the left side of the box and there's no spacing around it. On the right, that is a good spacing because there's white space around the edge of the text. Size is also known as mass. Each piece you create has a physical size. Additionally, each component of design has their own size relative to the whole piece. Balance is the process of arranging components of a page that distributes the visual weight of the piece to achieve a specific look or feel. Here are some examples of balance. Throughout the year, we will talk more about the elements and principles of design. As you're designing, it's important to know who you are designing for. This is your target audience, a group interested in the subject matter, to whom a digital media project is marketed. Let's take a look at one more design. What's the purpose? What's the message? Who's the target audience? Where's the focal point? And what elements and principles are being used? Now let's look at a bad design. How can you fix this? And what is so bad about this? Now that you have a better eye for design, I want you to look around your house and find some good examples of design and some bad examples of design. As you're doing this, think about scrap. Think about simplicity, contrast, repetition, alignment, proximity.